second.
You're live now, Julie.
Yep, it went live. So you're ready to go, Gail.
All right. I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order for June 17th, 2020. It is now, what time do you have, Julie?
7:04.
7:04. We have everybody present.
Not Doc. Doc is at the emergency room with a family member.
Okay, so it's just me and Aaron.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it's just Aaron Ivy and myself. And Doc Fellner is absent. Do we have a motion to approve his absence?
I'll make a motion to approve the absence of Dr. Fellner.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Dr. Fellner's excused. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. If you had a chance to take a look at the minutes.
Probably not in what I gave you. I sent them separately. Gail.
Okay,
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous committee meeting.
okay. What was that?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Okay, Aaron Ivy makes the motion to approve the minutes. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like same sign. Okay, the minutes of the May 20th, 2020 meeting are hereby approved. Next, we need the approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Okay, Aaron makes a motion to approve the agenda. I'll second that. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, the agenda is now hereby approved. Discussion items. First, we have the CARES Act, legislation ordinance number 2020-41. Who would like to take that one? Is that going to be Brian?
I think I can address that. The mayor might be able to jump in on this. The CARES legislation has been referred to as the money coming from the state via the federal government, or the federal government via the state, I guess I should say on that one correctly. We found out that we had to have a legislation to approve our acceptance of that and that we would abide by the rulings on that. This legislation is based on that and other sample legislations, from what I understand, talking to Mr. Palmer. It's fairly straightforward. I would suggest that on Tuesday, this be approved as emergency. You can read the legislation on that. Mayor, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, the only thing I would add is that it appears that the money will come in not divided up in any way. And one of the things that we'll have to do once we receive that money through the county auditor is to designate it for eligible uses. And that's where all of us, to the extent we have a chance to read the legislation, should look at the allowable uses. So this is money that's, from my understanding, needs to be spent on COVID-related expenses. So we're going to work on some of the, we made some COVID-related expenses, the 50,000 for the contact tracing or whatever use the health department ultimately puts that to, and then the money that fueled the initiation of the loan program. Those are two eligible activities under the CARES Act. So we're going to see if there's some way we can compensate is not the right word, but use those CARES dollars to help fund some of those activities and retrieve some of the money that would have come from a more of a general fund source. So that's really all I've got.
Yeah, in Brian's explanation there, did he say how much we were getting, or does anybody know?
It's about 185, I think, 185,000.
Okay, and this is
And
from
it's, yeah.
It's being distributed from the state of Ohio, correct?
Right, and the formula that they're using, Gail, is the same formula that they divide up the local government fund. So roughly the county's going to get half of it, and the two cities will get not quite a quarter of it, but a chunk of it. And then the villages and other eligible jurisdictions. I'm not sure if townships are included, but I suspect they are. So it's going to divide up based on the local government formula. And
Okay,
about 185,000 is the forecast.
okay, thanks, Mayor.
This is what we've been discussing over the past month or so. So it's nice to hear some finality with numbers and that it's finally starting to get processed. I don't have any further questions about it. I just don't remember what the ordinance number is that we can get it moved out of committee to full council.
Aaron, it's 2020-41.
Okay. Mr. President, do you have anything else to add to this discussion?
No, I'm good. I don't know if Carl has anything or not.
All right. Well, if nothing else, I'd like to make a motion to move ordinance 2020-41 to full council for consideration.
And I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, the CARES Act legislation, ordinance number 2020-41, moves to full council. Next, we have ban discussion. Again,
That's
I'm
gonna
gonna
be
refer
me,
to-
Gail.
Hmm.
That's gonna be me, Brian.
yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Mr. Chairman. This actually is not a discussion point anymore. What we were concerned about initially was that there might not be any banks because of the economic situation interested in doing the borrowing at this point. In discussions in the last 24, 48 hours, that's not a point. So nothing to be discussed at this point. We can go on to point C if you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. That's good with me. Let's move on to C then. It's borrowing for the Harding Way project discussion. Is that going to be you, or does the mayor want that?
I'll take that. It's my second thought, or my thought. When we went and used existing appropriation authority to be able to fund the 402,000, which is our share of that 1.4 million, I think, Harding Way project. It really has left us with only $220,000 for our paving program. It's it's paving. I don't even want to call it a program. It's kind of like a paving pro. So it's a very much reduced. We in the last 2 years have been more in the mid 300,000, and so with the cost of money relatively low, I wanted to come back and see if there was an interest in having a larger paving program this year, and we could do that by going ahead and borrowing the same amount, 400,000, adding that to the 220, and then coming up with the list of projects, the list of streets. So that's the idea. It's about that simple. It's not we'll all be disappointed if we only do $220,000 worth of paving.
Okay.
Mr. President, if I could, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, as far as financial viability and, just the intelligence of the suggestion, I mean, do you feel very confident that we're where we need to be? And my second question is that what area of town, what streets did you have in mind right off the top of your head? And thank you.
Well, on the second one, Aaron, if I might, I wouldn't jump. See, am I on here? I wouldn't jump into the list yet. It kind of, 220,000 is probably 5 or 6 blocks. It won't be
Okay,
many streets.
I didn't
It'll be
know
a
that.
real limited and targeted effort. Now, of course, you have to take into account that all of Harding Way will be resurfaced. So it won't be as if there isn't new asphalt, if you will. But it's really, I think, worth considering. Here's another reason. I would call this kind of a lame reason, but when you look into the budget, you had passed the budget. We'd proposed it, and you'd passed it with $460,000 being borrowed. So when you look on the revenue side, we anticipated borrowing the money.
Okay.
So it's in the budget in that sense. But it does represent a, I'm trying to think here. Brian, what do you think? 3% money, roughly?
We got the money last year at 2.65 on
Right.
that. I would anticipate real close to that again this year, possibly a little less.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
given
real
where
good
we're
with those fractions as far as multiplying, but just by way of how much it will cost, if it's 3%, this $400,000 will cost us $12,000.
12,000.
So roughly, if it's less, if it's 2 point something, then it's going to be between, say, 10 and 12,000. I'm not a big fan of borrowing money for short-term paving, but I did want to bring it up. It's in the budget. Brian had gone and sort of shopped the number, and then we made a decision to use capital improvements funds and the rest of the paving budget. Where you would see where the money that went to ODOT, it came from, I'm going to get the numbers off, so I'll just round them out. Roughly 200,000 from the capital improvements budget and 200,000 from 201, which is the street department budget. That second 200 wiped out the 201 infrastructure paving budget.
Tom, to give you the exact numbers on
Yeah,
that, it's
please.
209,000 out of 201 and 193 and change out of 401.
Yeah. So it is I don't know, a do-over might be a way to say it, but I think it's worth considering because Brian's getting right at the end of getting those quotes and setting the amount of bond anticipation notes that we'll issue. So that's it.
If I can jump in on that point,
Please.
Mr. Mayor, if the committee approves this, which I think I would recommend, I will be approaching the banks to get the information to them as this additional money. I've talked to Allison on that. It will, of course, hinge on the final acceptance by council on Tuesday, but we will move forward on this because we are running a little tight on time.
So you'd want to get this through council if possible on an emergency declaration as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Mr. Chairman, back to Aaron, the first half of Aaron's question. If we have the money, then projects like North Market, which is going to be real important to have that resurfaced when the Portland Way widening happens. I think we got a quote last year just doing a small section of Market by way of illustration. It was nearly 80,000. So we canceled that last year. So you're going to have a couple of chunks of pavement about that amount. There was a question on Monday night, I guess, about Edward Street. I probably thoroughly irritated them because the question was, when are you going to pave Edward Street? Well, I'm not even going to guarantee at 600,000 we'll pave it, but we ought to be able to do something with that.
Yeah, I take that bypass every day, Mayor. And
yeah. Okay, well, so anyways, that's the whole thing, Chairman and Aaron. The idea of for 12,000 in interest money, and then we'll pay down. So it would be 12. It'd probably be no more than 100,000. Kind of depends on how long we choose to roll over those band notes, those anticipation notes, but I would say 7 years. So take the roughly 400,000 and divide that out by 7. And that's about how much a year we'll pay in principal to take care of that borrowing. So
Okay, yeah, right now the interest rates are really, really low. It's a good time to borrow if we need to. Just as long as it's not going to bite into our budget for next year for paving.
no, that's a good point, Gail. I would say the one fund, the one revenue stream that's I'm still kind of queasy about is the gas tax. And if I had a crystal ball, I guess I hope this more than I can predict. I hope that travel by next year, when we would be looking for the revenue to support next year's budget, I really hope. I don't know if driving's not back to kind of a more normal level, then we'll be hurting in other ways. But I really expect our gas tax revenue to uptick next year, and it's going to be a little bit. It is puny. Ever since the shutdown, it's shrunk. I don't know, 20% or more. I think. Isn't that right, Brian? About 20%.
That sounds
Gas
right,
tax.
Tom. It's about what it was. It's a little bit more than what it was prior to the tax increase. So it's
That's really bad news.
Yeah.
So that rate increased and our revenue stays the same. Yeah.
Well, if the revenue stays the same, then it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, stays the same as in like last year's revenue.
Right,
So
right.
we're off. But anyway, I don't want to overtalk it. If the committee wants to do it, this is sort of last chance to go ahead and have a solid 2020 paving program.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly don't have any objections to moving this on to full council.
This would be ordinance 2020-43 is what number it would get.
Is it Julie? Is that the one that I have here that's just got 2020 and it's blank?
Yes,
It's got
that was prepared.
405,000 in it.
Yes,
Okay,
prepared by bond council. So that would be 2020-43.
43.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I'd like to make a motion to send ordinance 2020-43 to full council for consideration.
Yeah, I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, ordinance number 2020-43 moves on to full council. Next, we have authorized bidding for tree clearing, ordinance number 2020-40.
That's a quick. I think Nikki's on here, but I'll just if she's lurking in the background there, we'll let her. She's off this. Sorry, I'll handle that. Yeah, excuse me. I think Nikki is on, but we'll just let her rest her voice. She's off this week, but I believe on this call. Anyway, we did not at the beginning of the year bid out a tree trimming contract. The money's in the budget. If you remember last year, we kind of in a more emergency way spent, I believe, $150,000. And so this year, in talking with Superintendent Pangborn, we're all in agreement, service director, myself, and the line department, that we need to get out there and get a low bid and get approach, begin tackling this sort of systematic trees in our power lines issue. So this will be the more systematic. It'll be more the buzz cut for people who aesthetically cringe. It won't be trimming. It'll be really trying to clear certain sections of town so that there's no branch within 10 feet of the line. So we got to do it. It saves us all kinds of outages. I think there's no doubters on the value of it.
Yeah, I agree.
This is the first I took a look at this ordinance. I don't see anything on here of where that money's going to be coming from. Could you fill us in on where that money's coming from?
Yeah, I don't know if Julie just didn't get in there. Yeah, it's coming out of the technical services budget in 605 in the line department.
So it'll be coming out of the line department's
Yeah.
budget.
And
Okay,
we there was money in there for it. We just getting around to bidding it, I guess. Is one way of
Okay.
saying it.
all right, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to send ordinance 2020-40 to full council for consideration.
And I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, ordinance number 2020-40 moves on to full council. Next, we have a request for freeze projects, ordinance number 2020-42. Mayor,
Yeah, I'm fiddling. I keep muting myself. I apologize. The logic or the thinking behind this is that 4 months into this pandemic and looking what's happened with the stock market and looking at how much of our parks are open and the logic or the need for finishing some projects correctly, really what bring this up. And so I believe Aaron, and I know Matt just took to you, Gail, a sheet that
Yeah, I
has
have
some
here.
of the, let me go through it quickly and explain with the swimming pool. What we're proposing to get done is really at this time, it's the blue, what is in blue, which is the pump replacement and chemical controllers. We replaced a pump. I don't think it's making anyone real happy. So this would entail purchasing a new pump, higher efficiency. And then the other item would be the chemical controller. They're having to do a lot of hourly testing of the chlorine. And this, from what I can understand or what I know about it, this chemical controller, we've gotten our best years out of it. And so that's project one. Or one of the ones that I think we should have council pass and make a request to the freeze funds, or excuse the freeze foundation for these funds. So that's that. I think the other stuff, the slide and some other items have been noted in a recent pool inspection, but we're going to have trouble repairing some of those without stopping the operation of the pool. So we'll talk when service director gets back and talk a little bit with the management at the Y, run the pool, about what to do with the slide. And we don't want to have it open if it's not safe, but I don't want to shut down the pool for 3 weeks while they do the replacement and the painting. So that's it on the pool. Hope that. Any questions?
That's probably work that can be done after the pool closes. It's probably gonna be.
I think you're exactly right, Gail. And
good weather.
And we may want to approach that way. Those in blue are real urgent. We may want to request funds. There's nothing that stops us from making a second request to the foundation. They're seem to be much more flexible now in having meetings other than those kind of semi-annual meetings. So I'm hopeful that if we get these done and like you're saying, Gail, we need to just at the end of the season make all the repairs to the pool, then that is a good. It's like other things. It's like your snowmobile if you have one. I don't, but at the end of the season, you just put it away. You don't think much about it when we really should tackle some of those things that will slow us down in the spring of 2020. We might want to tackle them this year.
Yeah, this pump replacement, Mayor, that's the one that's been acting up down at High Sea Park? Is that
Yes.
the one you're talking?
Yeah, and the chemical controller, I won't profess to be an expert, but it has been highly frustrating, and I give credit to everybody who's been involved trying to respond to it's a swimming pool emergency. It's not the end of the world, but it's pretty
Right.
important for people who want to swim, and they responded quickly. That what I thought was going to be weeks turned into days, I think, as all of us know. So
Mayor,
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question. Do we have any
Sure.
options to get some of these immediate repairs done without having to close the pool down? Because with our delayed start
Yeah.
and, is this something that we can get through the summer and get the pool shut down in 6 to 7
Yeah,
weeks for the rest of the year, or?
the pool pump will be 6 to 8 weeks out. What we're hoping is this interim, if I'll call it interim replacement, which may turn into the backup pump.
Okay.
We'll use that until we get a new pump in, and that may require licensing from the Department of Health. So we want to factor that in. The chemical controller replacing like for like, and so we'll just it's a matter of getting it installed. So that should happen quickly, and it's
Okay.
working. It's the pool is being treated, but it's being treated not automatically. It's being treated by automatic is not the right, but they have to test the water more frequently than if they had the new controller in there, giving them a better idea of the chlorination.
All right.
And I'm starting to make it up, so if it starts to sound like baloney, maybe that is. I've exhausted my knowledge base, you folks. So I'll stop there.
Sounds good.
So
Okay,
that's
this
that
page-
one. If there are any questions, the next one is the bike path. I'll make a long story short. The items that we need to include, and if people have a good memory, these are items that we took out of the bids last summer. And then we got an especially good bid, much under that. And we used the freeze dollars that were, if you will, on the table to finish up some projects last year. Okay. This year we get to the point of concluding, and there's some items that need included that were cut last year. So I would say, like, well, why'd you do that? Well, the reason we did is we were concerned that we wouldn't get a bid at the engineer's estimate, and then we would be stuck without a contractor, $160,000 to build the thing, and be no closer to it happening. So we took some things out that, scoring my own judgment, I would say shouldn't have taken out. Now we have to plug those in. And I'm recommending, rather than using scarce parks funds, that we go to the Freeze Foundation and explain the situation and ask them for what amounts to $54,000. That's for fencing. If you haven't trespassed out there, you're probably the only person that hasn't, But anyways, there's been a lot of activity, kind of unfortunately, but there's the fence at the south end of the project that we need to put up to separate the treatment plant from the recreational users. And that is about 30 grand. And then we have seeding and striping. The striping, I don't want to overtalk this, but striping is at the 2 mini parking lots. That's not in there. If you go out there and look, there's a nice parking lots at both ends. I think they'll be certainly adequate, but there's no delineation of the spaces. So that's a small amount for striping. We're not going to stripe the pavement itself, but we will stripe the parking lots, and then the seeding. There's 0.8 of a mile times 2, because you've got bare soil that needs seeded. So all of that is expected to be 54,000.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the next one. There's 2 more projects if you folks have the patience for them. I had I made a point to go see the superintendent, new and soon to be former, and we had a handful of things to talk about. Among them, the freeze fund came up. And so they asked if there was any possibility of getting at least part of their request reconsidered. I said, kind of crawling on the lid a little bit, that, you know, kind of by the way, we've got to go back to council to get permission to go to the freeze board. I'll bring the football lights project back up. So one of the things that I'd like council to consider is including the 75,000 for the football lights. It's 100,000, I think 98 grand is their estimate. So they'll have their roughly 25% in it. And that, it really depends on what passion, if any, you have for the football stadium and the track events they have at night. And it's not just Friday night. They use that field 3 or 4 nights a week with youth and middle school freshmen and stuff. So anyways, if you have passion for modernizing the lights, you really like the project. If you're somebody that never goes and uses the stadium, you probably think it's a lesser priority. But that's something that I would recommend that we take care of. Check it off the list. We aren't going to, in this proposal, we aren't going to get a toe in the water over at the new soccer field. And we had a good conversation about what I think is the feeling at City Hall about putting freeze dollars in school-related activity or facilities if they're in a city park, but probably not as enthusiastic about funding with freeze dollars recreational facilities on school property. So anyways, that's the that project's been around for a while, and that's something for you to consider as the council to add to and send up to the Freeze Foundation.
The 75 isn't currently in the ordinance you have in front of you, but it could be easily added there to the bottom of section, or as section B under, or yeah, under section A, item B under section 1. Sorry.
What is it, but as far as the ordinance stands now, does it, because I don't have it in front of me, I'm only on my phone and I don't have a computer
Right.
with me. So what is omitted from the ordinance as it currently stands? Is it the football lights with covering the pool needs and everything else that was mentioned?
Yeah, it's I don't have the ordinance in front of me either. I think it's what I talked about before. Julie, do you have, not to,
Yeah, I had it. What I
do you have
did,
safety netting in that ordinance?
no, what we
Okay,
did.
so
was-
that's the next one. So it'll be the same situation on that one.
Okay, well, what
Yeah.
we did was, since we had already amended the previous ordinance, and these were 2 new items that wasn't in the previous, Thomas suggested that we just do a new ordinance. So this was an ordinance for additional items, which was the pump replacement controllers, because that wasn't in the previous, and neither was the fencing or seating was, so it was kind of, so we just did it as a whole new ordinance. We didn't amend the previous ordinance or anything, so.
So the way that the ordinance is presented right now has all 4 items listed in it, right?
No, it only has the pool improvements and controllers and the bike path fencing and striping. That's it.
My personal comfort level is to get the bare necessities done for right now in this moment in time, and not to delay by any stretch of the imagination as far as the lights and other things that are desired, but and not hold it off for another 90 to 120 days, but maybe come back and see where we're at in 30 days. But put the request before the Freeze Foundation of exactly what we absolutely have to have at this point in time, just for June, and then maybe revisit in July. But that's my own personal opinion.
But,
Well, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get it out of committee, Gail. Otherwise, so that. But anyway, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just think it's if we're going to go back, we might include that project and another one. If you give me a second, Gail, I want to mention, and that is in talking with the girls softball group who had the large tournament. We had from what I understand, it went well in many ways. We had some issue with making sure they have enough dumpster capacity. It doesn't work when there's garbage sitting outside the dumpster. I saw that at Heisey Park today too. So I'm not sure where that surplus came from, but in talking about it, they talking with their organizers, they're interested in moving ahead with the safety netting. And so I told their president they have the 25% that they would need
Okay.
for an $85,000 the safety netting project.
Who has that, Mayor?
That was another one. It's heck, you almost want to call it historic. It's been talked about every year sort of since we got the debt paid off and we started getting freeze dollars. So it's
If I may I ask
something
a
that we
question,
need
Mr.
to
Chairman?
consider, but maybe like Aaron said, you want to come back in a couple months.
Well,
I've been hit by balls out there.
Well,
Yeah.
if I could just pose, Mr. Mayor, I forgot about
Yeah.
what you informed me about yesterday. Mr. Chairman, there were, what'd you say, Mayor, 19 teams?
something
at
like
this point?
19 teams. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, that's a significant amount. I mean, maybe this isn't such a bad idea to move forward with, getting that safety netting out there, especially, it's baseball and softball time now. So
Yeah, and what I would say about that goes to kind of Gail's question before. I don't disagree, Aaron, but Gail was saying, some of this stuff at the pool, we might want to put ourselves in a position to fund at the end of the season. My guess is we've had a devil of a time finding a netting contractor, if you will, that we can get a quote out of. It happened, I think, 2 or 3 years ago when Chief Jackson was trying to buy netting for the baseball field. We had devil of a time on this. So it might be something that if the money's authorized, we may be looking at the fall of 2020 before we get an install.
all right.
So, yeah, and other thing I'd say is I'd be a little hesitant to turn, even though the safety netting's, it's important. If they're going to have some activity, if they're going to have games out there, I don't want to have a construction zone in the middle of all the other stuff that goes on in one of those tournaments. So anyway,
Yeah.
I
Mr.
wanna
Mayor,
propose both those, the football lighting and the netting, for your consideration, and they're both good projects. So
Mr. Mayor,
yeah,
on this list that he brought out here to me, there's, I know you talked about on the pool improvements, the
Right.
repair of the slide and stuff, but there's stuff here that's listed in orange, an orangish color, and, or yellow maybe.
yeah.
Why is that highlighted differently?
That
I
was
mean, the
what's on
cabin roof I know
previous
is done.
request.
Yeah, those those are I don't know, Matt. Can you?
Those
can
were
you
on the
weigh in?
request. that
Matt really
already
prepared the list,
approved.
Gail. I'll be.
Yes, the items in yellow are projects that council has already approved and have been approved to move forward. And
So
as
we have the money in place for those then.
Yeah, you're right. Gosh, thanks for asking, Gail. Matt,
Okay.
Matt, good answer. Yeah, those are that's the thin slice, the thin sliver that we approved of 60,000 or whatever earlier this
Okay.
year.
So
Right,
everything
that's
is
why I
not,
didn't amend that ordinance anymore. We just did a new one for these.
everything is not highlighted then is new projects, correct?
Yeah,
And the only ones you're looking at is the safety netting and the,
football lights. And then,
football lights. I don't see
right,
them
and
on
then
here.
those ones in blue.
Yeah, the two in blue, yeah.
Yeah.
The
I don't see
football
the
lights were
football
on the
lights, though.
first ordinance
Oh,
on
there they are, clear at the bottom, football. stadium
2020-16.
lights.
And then 2020,
Yeah.
21 amended that to the 60-some thousand. And now this ordinance is adding some of the things back. So,
So they're not gonna do these other projects then?
No, I think, the caution, we kind of hit the extreme caution by only asking for 60,000. And now it looks like these ones that we're proposing are either necessary or make sense and we can get them done quickly. I don't want to go full bore back. I think we're all holding our breath a little bit, and I don't want to, I don't want to spend in no way do I want to draw down that freeze foundation. So it's of no use to us. So
So we're
Correct.
looking at about
they're good projects, but I
$170,000,
don't know.
correct? I'm
Pardon
sorry,
me?
I didn't mean to interrupt. Forgive me, I
No,
didn't mean to interrupt. We're looking at about $170,000 in requests,
170, Matt. Yeah, it's 170.
give or
Yeah.
take. Mr.
Okay.
That'd
President,
be
or
about
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with this and moving this
Yeah,
forward.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to get an understanding
Yeah.
of what I'm looking at here, because it was just.
I was
handed
too,
to me.
Gail. I just had to open that email back up and figure it out while everybody
Yeah,
was
because I'm
talking,
seeing
but-
a number here from freeze funds of 398 and then. new
Yeah.
that was the
projects.
first one.
Yeah, and then clear at the bottom, there's a 166, 685. So.
That was the
That's that.
school request, but we only funded 75,000 of it. That was the school request.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we're looking at the fencing for the bike path, we're looking at the pools, the pumps, and we're looking for the football lighting for about just to move on to council, if I'm understanding this right, for consideration for about a total of 170 grand, right?
That's what it sounded like to me.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't have any objections to that, Mr. Chairman. And it's
Okay.
still, it still gives us what, 180 to $200,000 to sit on to allow that interest to build back up on the principal and the freeze. And it gives us a little bit of a safety net if we have another emergency come up later in the year. So,
Correct.
all right,
Okay.
I would like to, what is this, 2020-42?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to move ordinance 2020-42 to full council for
It would be
consideration.
as amended because you're adding the 75,000 and the 85,000.
Yeah,
Do I
that's your wish.
Stay
Yeah.
as amended then?
Yeah, you need to amend.
Okay, I would like to move 2020-42 as amended to full council for consideration.
Okay, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, ordinance number 2020-42 moves on to full council. Next, we have F, which is investments, and I would imagine that's Brian.
That's Brian. Today, Meter Investments has been monitoring what short-term rates are at versus Star Ohio. We had $1 million of investment coming in or maturing, I should say. Their recommendation, rather than to try and get a short-term rate of somewhere around 0.2 something, was to move that money to Star Ohio, which we have done. There's no vote required of that. I'm simply informing council of what was done to try and get as best we can out of the interest rates right now. That's all
Okay.
that one was.
Thank
All
you.
right, and Brian, yeah, thanks for that. And you'll be making that announcement Tuesday night, right?
Yes.
The full
I'll
council?
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
All right, next we'll move on to G, which is financials. And under that, we have a supplemental appropriation 2020-39. So Brian, that's, I would
This
assume
may
is
be-
yours also.
This may be a variety of characters coming on in this one, Gail, but let me try and go through this one. When you and I talked yesterday, there were two changes that came in. We had some of the health department issues came to us that we added to that over and above what you and I talked about. And also yesterday at 2:00, I still thought we were meeting in person. That changed about 5. So I apologize for not getting back with you on that.
Changed yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yes, yesterday. The first one in section 2 is $1,000. This is primarily to reload, if I can, the operating supplies, the mayor's office, covering some of the price purchases of COVID-related supplies that they're buying for the municipal building on that.
Brian, if I may.
Yeah, sure. I
Just
forgot
to
you're here.
clarify, that $1,000 is the result of a PEP grant that Nikki applied for through our general liability insurance. So we are appropriating that money to replace some of the funds that have been spent on COVID. And the expenditures were from that line in the mayor's office. So that's why we're appropriating it there to replace it. So that's some grant money that we received that's going back to it.
So we're appropriating it so it can be spent.
It's already been spent.
Okay,
We already spent the money, so this replenishes it back for what they
yeah,
spent.
okay, all right, yeah, replenishes it back, okay.
Eunice, I'm going to have you take 3 and 4, if you would, please, because this was also related to our COVID funding on this.
Well, it's not really related to our COVID funding, but we received an invoice for unemployment. We had some employees that filed for unemployment. While we did not lay anybody off or anything like that, if they have another job and their hours are reduced or anything like that, or if they're laid off from their other job, they can file for unemployment. We then have to supply them with income that they make from us, and a portion of their unemployment then becomes our responsibility. So the section 3 and 4 are appropriations to cover our exposed liability for the unemployment claims that we have at this point. And I think they're pretty self-explanatory for what departments they're from. Section 5 and 6 is the health department. Again, that's the mosquito grant. So this is appropriating the money for the mosquito grant that will take place this year. Again, I think that's pretty much self-explanatory what lines those are going into. Those are where the expenditures will come from for the mosquito grant. And then section 7 through 13 are all for our debt issue. We have to make a payment to Huntington for our debt from last year, and we did not appropriate enough funds for those for that payment. So we need to appropriate additional funds to cover that. And all of these I would request would be as an emergency at the council meeting.
Thank you, Eunice. Any questions on this?
Yeah, Eunice, you said on 5, section 5, that was a mosquito grant. Is that, does 6 fall in that same, is that also mosquito grant money, the 11,000?
Correct.
Okay, so that's all mosquito
Correct.
grant money.
Yes, it totals the $19,510 for the mosquito grant.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Gail, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
If we didn't have anybody laid off, how are we liable for unemployment?
Well, I was wondering that same thing, Mark.
I'm not an expert but again, from what I understand, let's say that I had another job somewhere else, and let's say I worked at Walmart and I got laid off from Walmart through this. The state then asks me questions. I have to fill out in a form when I file for my unemployment that says where all I worked. They go to those employers and request verification of wages. Based on what you make at each place, they use a formula to calculate the percentage of what is used, and that's how it's divvied out. We do pay to Job and Family Services as reimbursement for unemployment every month. I think it's every month. I don't think it's every pay, but we do make payments to them as well. And then, like I said, we received a bill for this. We get it sometimes for our seasonal workers. It just varies, but with these, we did not have any appropriations in those lines to cover this.
Yeah, but I don't understand. If no one's laid off, how can we be liable for unemployment?
You'd have to talk to the state. I can't,
No,
it's their laws.
that is.
I thought they went back and looked at where you were employed for like 6 months. So if someone did we have somebody that maybe changed employment? And
No, that is not what this is.
okay.
Hey, Eunice,
Yes,
it's a part-time dispatcher, isn't it?
correct.
Yeah. So you got somebody who worked part-time here and then work probably a bigger share at, I don't know if Walmart was by way of example or if it was.
It was just an
It-
example.
Yeah, so they worked somewhere else, they got laid off there. We're only gonna pay a portion of the unemployment this person earns.
Right.
It's,
And I'll point out, and what
Yeah.
the mayor said made me think of this. The total of these appropriations is not what we have been billed for to this point, but it is our total exposure. So to prevent having to come back and ask for more appropriations, the Job and Family Services provides me with a report as to what our total liability would be for their claim. So for these individuals, that is our total liability. So I won't necessarily spend all of it, but I don't want to have to come back and ask for more each time, because the turnaround on this is very quick. I just found out about this today and I have to have it paid by the end of the week.
hey, if I may say something, Gail, I've sometimes have been jerky to Eunice. We've had, we have our back and forth, that's okay, but she's absolutely right on this. It's really hard to understand. It's weird why we would be stuck, and she's right. We had this, I think 2, maybe 3 summers ago with one of our mowers, part-time mower. End the season, we get hit with unemployment. Well, his other employer told him to go ahead and file because he'd already paid in. So all of a sudden we got hit with that. So we don't pay in our appropriation, we don't have a percent of payroll taken out. We pay forward on claims basically. So anyway.
And the mayor is right. It was 2016 was the last time we had this. So it's not very often. And that's why I believe that's why we don't budget for it, anticipating it, because it's just not very often.
Yeah. I guess it's not a part-time dispatcher, but I guess I just got texted. The other one is the airport manager.
Well, they're in
Understand that.
separate, those are in the separate
Yeah.
sections, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
Okay, yeah, you're right, Mayor. It is hard to understand and it's very confusing. So,
I apologize if I missed anything, and everyone, my phone
No,
died
man.
at the moment.
I didn't realize you were gone, sorry.
Yeah.
Anything then? No, what did I miss? We don't have to relive it, but
When did you fall out? Whoops.
probably about 4 to 5 minutes ago. Oh, hey,
No.
where are we at now?
we're on ordinance
Funny
number
man.
2020-39, their
Or we need to
appropriation.
get that, are we considering, Mr. Chairman, get that to full council for consideration? I didn't propose anything that I had heard up until the time I got disconnected.
Yeah, we had a discussion on these appropriations and where they're coming from, what they're for, and the only real concern was we were talking about layoffs and us being, even though we don't have employees laid off, but evidently we have some that are laid off from a secondary job, and we're responsible for a portion.
That's where I got
there.
cut off at, Mr. Chairman, and
Yeah,
unfortunately,
and so
that's the
we're just
law.
having a
We
little
have to do
discussion
it.
on there, why we're, trying to figure out why we're stuck with that.